Alright, so today I wanted to talk about the number one thing that I have struggled with the most learning to shoot pistols, which is trigger control. I'm sure a ton of you watching this can relate to the feeling of going out to practice and shoot, and every time you draw your gun and shoot a shot or a couple shots, they all seem to go low left. Now, I've heard a lot of different explanations for why people shoot low left, whether that's an improper grip with their support hand if you're shooting right-handed, or whether it's improper trigger press, or just a shitty trigger like a stock Glock trigger. All those things can make you shoot low left. But if you're like me, you've found that no matter how much you practice those things like getting better with your grip or getting a better trigger, your shots are still going low left and not where you want them to go. Well, today I want to share with you the one thing that I started doing that completely changed my trigger control for pistol shooting and made me a much better shooter. And the best part is, you don't even need to shoot any ammo to practice this. Alright, so first I want you guys to understand why your shots are going low left or why you have bad trigger control. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I've heard a lot of people say that shots going low left is because you have a bad support hand grip and you're letting the gun move to the left too much. Now, that's not necessarily wrong, but if you're holding the gun and it's moving to the left at all, then you're doing something wrong in the first place. Your left hand shouldn't have to push back into the gun to push it back to the right to keep your shot straight, because you should be able to hold the gun like this with one hand and not have it do this and just have it stay straight and steady while you pull the trigger. Pushing harder with your support hand to push the gun back the other way can make your shots go where you want, but that's really just putting a band-aid over the actual problem. So to help you guys understand here, I want to demonstrate why your shots tend to go low left when you're shooting. The main reason for that is a sympathetic movement in your strong hand when you pull the trigger. And for those of you with a little bit smoother brain, I'll explain that a little more simply. Basically, when you are on the trigger ready to shoot and you go and pull the trigger, what's happening is you're not only moving your trigger finger, you're actually just barely squeezing your entire hand. So when you go to pull that trigger, it's actually moving all of your fingers, so the gun tends to do this because you're squeezing too hard with the rest of your hand. Now, in a lot of cases, that can be because of shot anticipation, like you've got your grip built up and you're ready to shoot and you're like, okay, the shot's gonna break now, and when you shoot, your whole hand just tenses up and flexes a little bit because you're waiting for the recoil so that you can control the recoil. But that's not necessarily always the case, because squeezing your trigger finger and having the rest of your hand move and flex and dip is actually just very normal for the human body to do. Teaching your hand to grip very firmly on your gun while letting this finger move completely freely without influencing the rest of your hand, it's just something that's difficult to teach yourself to do. So getting to what you can do to fix this is actually dry fire. So to show you guys what you can do in dry fire to fix your trigger control, you're basically just going to set your hammer so that you can click the trigger, and instead of doing what you would maybe normally do and building your grip and getting up on that wall of the trigger and then trying to just click it back, what I want you to do instead is to just have your finger touching the front of the inside of the trigger guard. Here, let me get a little bit closer so it's easier for you guys to see. So my finger is touching the front of the trigger guard here like this. And I'm just gonna go like this and slap the trigger all the way back. Now, I'm sure tons of you have heard that that's not a good thing to do, to slap the shit out of the trigger like that. And when you're actually shooting, you probably don't want to do that. But what this is doing is giving your finger this longer, bigger, more exaggerated movement is actually getting your hand used to holding the gun still while letting this finger do what it wants. So you'll set your hammer, you'll have your finger touching the front of the trigger guard, and then you'll just slap it back like that. So that's the movement that you want to do when you're dry firing like this, is just slapping the trigger back and forth. But what you're actually focusing on is you need to pick something to aim at. At my house, I have a piece of masking tape on my wall, which is what I always aim at when I'm dry firing. But you just need something to put your sight on that you can focus on. And you can do this from low ready, you can do it from whatever. I usually do it from a draw so that I can get used to building my full grip and then having the good trigger control after that. Also, I do apologize for the wind noise if you guys can hear that. It's just a windy day today. I can't really do anything about it. But so what I'll do is I'll just pick a point to aim at and focus on, and I'll draw, build my grip, but my finger is not on the wall of the trigger. When I normally build my grip, it's a habit for me to get on the wall of the trigger, which is a good habit to have. But in this case, we want your finger all the way off the trigger at the front of the trigger guard. So I'll draw, I'll build my grip, I'll have my finger way up there, and I'm just focusing on having my red dot on that point that I'm aiming at and holding it there, and then as I slap that trigger back, I don't want that dot to move at all. Now, when you first start doing this, it probably will move, just because you're not used to moving only your trigger finger without moving the rest of your hand. So if you come up, find your dot, and then slap your trigger and you see the dot dip down and to the left, then you can see that that's why your shots are usually going low left. So basically what you want to do is you want to just set yourself up for some dry fire, throw on a good video in the background, like one of my other fantastic videos, and you just want to stand here and practice drawing, building your grip, and slapping that trigger all the way back without influencing your sight or moving your sight. Now, personally, I had to do this a lot. I had to just stand there in my room and do this, slap. And I probably did that a couple hundred times before I really started feeling like it was a habit and I was feeling comfortable with not affecting my sight. And that's great. That's what you want to do. So you just want to keep practicing your dry fire, building your grip, having your finger all the way off the trigger, and then slapping it all the way back without moving your sight. Okay, so now you've done that a bunch. You've practiced your draw, you've practiced slapping the trigger all the way back, and you're getting pretty confident in not moving your sight when you slap the trigger. So the next step of this is to do it more than once, basically. You can stand here and practice your draw and slap the trigger back, and that's great. But you need to also practice slapping the trigger back and then continuing to slap the trigger back a bunch of times without affecting your sight. Doing it once is easy. Being able to do that over and over and over again is where it's actually a little more difficult. So it'll be the same thing where you just want to pick your point of aim on your wall or your TV or whatever. If you're watching John Wick and helping him shoot the bad guys, that's great. But what you'll want to do is do the first step, pull up, shoot, but then you want to take your finger off the trigger and do it again. And then off the trigger and then do it again. And when I'm doing this, I'm not slapping the trigger the first time and then doing these little resets. I'm going all the way off and all the way back on every time. And this is actually something that I heard Bob Vogel talk about. If you don't know who Bob Vogel is, he's an unbelievable inhuman shooter. But he talks about practicing his trigger control in dry fire, and he talks about how that's basically how he figured out trigger control. And he says that it's very important that when you're practicing your trigger control that you do it more than once. That you sit here and pull the trigger over and over and over again. What I've found myself doing is I'll just do a bill drill. I will pick a point on the wall to aim at, and then I'll draw and I'll come up and I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And every time I do that, I'm going all the way off the trigger and all the way back on, slapping it every time to get used to not moving the rest of my hand while this finger can do what it wants. And that whole time that I'm shooting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I am focusing very intently on not moving my red dot. I have my little piece of like 2" by 2" masking tape on the wall, and the whole time I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm focusing on keeping that red dot inside of that piece of tape on the wall. Hey buddy, old pal, how you doing? You hanging in there? You been going to church? You look pretty holy today. So of course, it's important to remember that just like with anything, you have to practice this a lot. You're not gonna go do 1 or 2 dry fire sessions and then see a massive improvement in your trigger control. You need to do this a lot, hundreds of repetitions, so that you start building it as a muscle memory. So that when you come out and shoot live fire, you don't have to think about pulling the trigger without affecting the sights, because it's already such a subconscious thing that you've practiced hundreds of times in dry fire that you don't really need to worry about it. But I am telling you guys, trigger control is the #1 thing that I have struggled with the most learning to shoot pistols. And this trick really is the one thing. I know that sounds like clickbait, this one trick fixed my trigger control, but it really is this one thing. Just practicing what I just showed you guys in dry fire over and over and over again, that really is what fixed my trigger control for me and made me a much more accurate shooter. All right, now I just want to give you guys one quick live fire thing that you can practice as well that also does help with your trigger control. This is usually how I'll start my training sessions, just as like a warm-up is doing this. So I have a little red circle, I guess that's orange, on my target over here. Usually I'll just do this in the head box, but my head box is already full of holes, so we're just gonna use that red circle, orange. And I'm just gonna draw and shoot one shot and do my best to keep it in that circle. If I'm using the little credit card in the head, I'll just do my best to keep it in that head. And I'm just focusing on trying to go as fast as I can while still getting the shot inside of that circle. Okay. I'll show you guys the hits here. So I loaded myself 6 rounds, and you can see I got all 6 here in a really nice group. Now, if we're talking about competition shooting, most of those shots were around 2 seconds. That is a very slow first shot. But when my standard of accuracy is this 2-inch by 2-inch circle, I have to go slow to make sure I get these good hits. And by doing this using a small target like this or the credit card in the head, you're just giving yourself a much more strict standard of accuracy to follow. So if you're aiming for the whole alpha zone, you can aim here and slap a shot clear down here and still have a good hit. But when you're aiming at something this big or something this big, you have to really take your time and make sure that your shot is going to go where you want, and you're not going to slap that shot off target, because this is your standard of accuracy right here. You either hit here or you can miss here. So starting your training sessions off like this, just giving yourself a very small target and holding yourself to that standard of getting all your shots in here, it really makes you focus on not pulling shots off with bad trigger control, and kind of forces you to have a good trigger press, even if it is just a little bit slower. But that's not really the point of this practice, is not to shoot fast, it's to shoot accurate and not disrupt your sights. All right, guys, so that is about all I've got for you today in this video. I hope that you guys learned something. I hope that this trick, this dry fire trick I showed you guys, helps you guys as much as it helped me, because it really did just completely fix my trigger control. But anyway, guys, leave any questions that you have down below. I do my best to answer questions in the comments that you guys have, because I genuinely do just enjoy helping you guys become better shooters. Also, leave a comment down there. Let me know if there's anything else you would like me to make a video on, maybe something that you're struggling with. And again, just thank you so much for watching this video. Also, just remember, although you can get good information on the internet, the only way you're gonna really become a better shooter is by shooting.